Hi, welcome to StatStuff. I'm Matt Hansen. In this lesson, we're going to discuss CTQs, or critical to quality items, and review how to align a project opportunity to the overall business strategy and needs by understanding the business CTQs using a CTQ Drilldown. There are no prerequisite lessons for this module, so we can dive right in. Let's begin by asking, why do we need to align a project to the business strategy and business needs?
Well, for the most part, everyone wants to contribute some sort of meaningful work or make a positive contribution back to the organization. But what if we don't see the value or the positive results of the work that we perform? Well, it could affect us in a couple of ways. One is that it could negatively influence how we're seeing ourselves. That is, we might be thinking of ourselves, if my work isn't adding value, then maybe I'm not of value. Or it could also negatively influence how our leadership is viewing us if they don't see the value in our work, and then it could put our own jobs at risk. So to know if our work is adding value, then we first have to understand what the business values, or whatever the organization is. What is it that they value? So in the same way, just as you might have a set of gears and a small gear can indirectly affect the movement of much larger gears, then even so with ourselves and the work that we perform, even though it might be small, could have a big effect on the much larger or the top level part of our organization. So how do we understand what the business values? Well, the value of the business is described as critical to quality, or CTQ. A CTQ is a characteristic that describes what the customer requires, or what they expect, or what they consider to be a priority. And it's generally going to be something that's measurable. So what are the CTQs of the business or the organization where we are? Well, in order to figure that out, we have to ask ourselves a couple questions. First, who is the ultimate customer? And what does that customer want or expect of us? Well, what we're going to go over next is a CTQ Drilldown. It's going to help answer some of these questions. And these CTQs typically are going to be drilled down to 3 levels deep, and it's going to get pretty complex. And what I want to show you next is the full CTQ Drilldown, and then we're going to dig a little bit deeper. So here is a picture of what the full CTQ Drilldown looks like. And even though this might look pretty complex as it is right now, we're going to take this piece by piece and walk through this so you can see where your part of your work fits into the overall part and how it rolls up to the top level of our organization.
So let's break this CTQ Drilldown into its various parts so that it will make a little bit more sense. First, who's the company's ultimate customer?
Well, believe it or not, the ultimate customer is not the person who's actually buying the company's product or service or whatever it is that you're selling as your source of revenue. Now, yeah, they are a primary source of revenue, but again, the company's success is based on the company's net worth or their equity. So in that case, if the company has, for example, mismanaged funds, then having more revenue isn't going to help. It's just prolonging the inevitable, which is insolvency. So if we want to know exactly what the ultimate customer is, I believe it would be the shareholder, because they're the one who is the true owner of the company. They're the one that owns the company, as represented by the board of directors. The CEO of an organization like that is the primary steward of the company, who's ultimately accountable to the shareholder. Now keep in mind, I do recognize that not every organization has a corporation is set up in the same way of having shareholders, a board, and a CEO. This is really to represent most general corporations and how they're organized. But what we're getting at here is really who's the true owner of the company, the ultimate person we're trying to serve, which again would not necessarily be the one who's giving us money. Yes, we want to serve them. Yes, we want their money. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we're also making a profitable company and the company's net worth is growing. So how do we measure this from the shareholder satisfaction perspective? Well, that's generally going to be reflected by the company's stock price. That's how we generally know how much the shareholder is satisfied. So as we perform well with the organization, we should see that reflected in the stock price, and it should reflect how the shareholders are satisfied with the organization. So if they're the ultimate customer, then again, what's the next question? What does the shareholder want or expect? Well, the shareholder CTQs then are for the company to perform well, to improve that stock price, and they want to do that in 2 different ways. First way is through marketplace performance, and we might say that we might measure that by analyst ratings. Now keep in mind, again, the CEO and executive staff, the board, don't have direct control over the marketplace. They only have an indirect influence over how the company performs in the marketplace. We're going to dig into that a little bit further. And the other area where they want to see the company perform well is in corporate performance. Generally, that might be measured like in earnings per share or EPS. Now, this is the area where the CEO and executive staff do have direct control over how the company is performing from a corporate perspective.
Now let's dive into what I call the level 1 CTQs of the CTQ Drilldown.
Now, as we drill down into this level 1, what we're really saying is that we're going to take the marketplace performance and the corporate performance and drill those down a little bit further to explore what the CTQs are for those specific areas. So let's start first with the marketplace. What are the CTQs for the marketplace? I believe that it would be corporate branding would be a good representation. Or when we say corporate branding, we're also referring to the corporate image or the integrity or what the speculation is for the performance of the organization. Now, it doesn't mean the marketplace doesn't care about corporate performance. All this is saying that this is the representation of the public's perception of the company. So let's dig into the corporate performance side. What are the CTQs for that? Well, we can say there are 3 different ones. First one might be employee satisfaction. Again, how satisfied are the employees in the corporation itself, which could be measured by percent of turnover, or maybe by grievances or lawsuits by the employees, or maybe there's surveys that are given for employee satisfaction, those kinds of things. Another one for CTQ could be a customer satisfaction. Similar, where we can see the turnover or churn for the customers themselves if they're leaving the company or no longer purchasing the items that are being sold by the company. Or we might also have surveys that help to measure the customer satisfaction. And the third one that we might use as a CTQ for corporate performance is financial performance. This is how well the company is really performing in its net equity. Or there's several other ways we can measure it through, again, earnings per share or some sort of economic value that's added or OIBDA or some other types of measurements that measure the financial performance of the company.
Now let's dig a little bit deeper by exploring the level 2 CTQs for each of those level 1 CTQs.
We'll begin our drill down of the level 2 CTQs by first looking at the corporate brand perspective. So what are the CTQs related to corporate brand? One of the examples I think would be things that are uncontrollable. Again, these are areas that the company cannot control or has no influence on. So an example of these could be something going on in the economy. A severe decline in the economy could have a big effect on the public's perception of the sustainability of the company. Or maybe government regulations that happen to have a direct impact on the products or services provided by the company. Again, that could affect the perception by the marketplace of the longevity for the company to withstand, survive in whatever those regulations or direct impacts could be on the products or services. Or other weather or disaster kind of issues. Again, things that are outside the company's control that could still have an effect on the perception by the marketplace that affects the corporate brand. Another thing could be controllable areas that the company has some influence on, and we might say that it's controllable in the sense that they do have influence, but they're not completely uncontrollable like the other ones we just talked about. So in this sense, there's a dotted line that would go from corporate performance because it does affect some of the areas that the company does have influence on, but not direct control. Well, let me walk through a couple of examples of those. Some things could include audits, as far as the audit might be something that's controlled directly by an outside organization, but the company's compliance to pass the audit, to submit to the audit, could have a direct impact on the public's perception of the company, as well as the advertising the company does. It could be good or bad, I guess, at influencing the company's perspective by the marketplace, as well as their compliance by government regulations or safety or environmental issues. They have some influence and control over those areas that if they don't have proper adherence to regulations or safety or environmental concerns, if they don't follow those things in a proper way, that could have a very negative impact by the marketplace. Again, with the marketplace having a negative outlook on the company's sustainability if they don't follow these things. So these are the basic areas that fall under corporate brand, the uncontrollable and controllable CTQs. All right, now let's explore the level 2 CTQs for employee satisfaction. So as we dig into those, a couple of the items that come to mind are opportunities or environment, for example, that could influence employee satisfaction. Some example of those are the advancement potential that employees have in the organization, or the ability for them to improve their skill set or keep them retained, or the working conditions, the safety of the environment that's provided by the organization. All of those are things that could affect the satisfaction of the employees. Another critical CTQ for employee satisfaction could be obviously compensation. Are they offered competitive wages? Are there good benefits or time off or bonuses? Or are there kind of discounted services or products that are provided to the employees? All these are kind of things that could be critical as far as affecting the satisfaction of employees at this level 2 CTQ. Alright, now let's drill into the CTQs for customer satisfaction. Now, when I drill into these CTQs for customer satisfaction, this one is a bit of a gray area because it can really vary depending on the type of organization you have and the overall intent for what you do for customers. So these are basically some generic terms that probably would apply to most organizations, most corporations, but obviously it may not apply to all. So with some of the examples that we have here for CTQ, for the level 2 might be product service. For example, what are the products or services that we're offering to our customers? That is, are we offering the right products or services that meet their needs or meet their wants, and it's at the right price point for those customers? And then another CTQ under customer satisfaction could be the quality. That is, how effective are those products or services that we're offering to our customers? In other words, are the products or services that we're offering effective at meeting those customers' needs or wants and giving them that perceived value that they intend from these products or services we're offering them? Alright, now let's drill down to level 2 of what I consider to be one of the most important level 1 CTQs, and that's financial performance. On this particular image, we had to truncate part of the image in order to make room for some of the text that I'll be displaying on here. But basically, what are the CTQs for financial performance? I believe one of the first ones is managing assets. And what I mean by that are some examples like the accounts receivable. How fast are we collecting the cash against our accounts receivable? Or for how we're controlling our asset purchases or our capital investments. Another CTQ at level 2 for financial performance would be managing our liabilities. And examples of that would be how fast we're paying off our debt, or maybe how slow or how much time we're allowed to extend the cash that we're paying out for some of our expenses, that is, like reducing our accounts payable, or managing our debt ratio. Now, for these two examples of managing assets and managing liabilities, what you may already be familiar with is that these are both of the two of the major components on a balance sheet typically. So let's dig into the next 3 pieces for financial performance at the level 2 CTQs, and that would be operating revenue, operating expenses, and non-operating expenses. And in contrary to the other one from assets and liability, these are part of the income statement. So some examples of these would include increasing revenue or decreasing some of the bad debts for our revenue, or reducing payroll or employee expenses and making more efficient operations. All these things alluding to how we can save money within the business in order to improve the overall financial performance.
Finally, let's go one layer deeper by reviewing the level 3 CTQs of each of those level 2 CTQs in this drill down.
Alright, so what are the level 3 CTQs? Basically, these drill down to any key metrics or initiatives that roll up to their respective level 2 CTQs. So at the level 3, they're generally going to be at the lowest and most detailed level that's even necessary to go. And they're also going to probably vary across different departments within the same organization. That's very common for one department to have their own set of level 3 CTQs compared to another department that has a completely different set of level 3 CTQs. And again, despite the differences at level 3, more than likely they will roll up to the same level 2 and then roll up to the same level 1 CTQs. At the same rate as well, these at the level 3 are most likely to change over time simply because departmental changes or reorganizations that occur within companies very often. It's not uncommon for the level 3 CTQs to also change. So how do you know if you're going to attack the right level 3 CTQs? Well, I would recommend just basically paying attention to the vision or strategy that's generally communicated by your departmental leadership. So as you listen to them as they talk through those things, pay attention to the key metrics, projects, or goals that they communicate, and those are most likely going to be candidates for a level 3 CTQ. And as you identify those candidate CTQs, use your best judgment to figure out which level 2 CTQ they would roll up to. And also, some level 3 CTQs may align to more than one level 2 CTQ. For example, you may have one critical metric within your organization that you might find rolls up to both the financial performance level as well as to customer satisfaction. And that's perfectly normal and perfectly fine as long as you understand how those roll up to those levels. If possible, try to align what those level 3 CTQs and get that validated by your leadership to make sure that you have it correctly aligned to what their perspective is. So how do your projects and initiatives align with these level 3 CTQs? This is really where the rubber meets the road. You should really be able to see where your functional work aligns to at least one of those level 3 CTQs. So if there's any work that you're doing, anything that you work on from a project, initiative, or any actions that do not align to a level 3 CTQ, I would challenge you to try to reevaluate the value of that project or initiative you're working with your leadership, because it may not be as critical as you think. In those cases, it may be necessary to consider eliminating that work altogether or researching it a little bit more in depth, just in case there's a level 3 CTQ that might be missing. So which level 3 CTQs are ideal for you to work on if you're working on a project? Well, from a Lean and Six Sigma perspective, really I would target any CTQ that's measurable and critical to your area. If it's something you can't measure, that's going to be a lot more challenging. For example, under the CTQ that rolls up through corporate branding, well, that's going to be very difficult to measure corporate branding, but it's a lot easier to measure something related to a financial perspective, like through financial performance. So if at all possible, if you got the option, I always recommend working on projects or prioritizing projects and initiatives that roll up to the financial performance level. And that way, if there are projects that roll up to that particular level, they're generally going to be a lot more measurable and have a lot bigger wow factor for showing the success and value contributed to the organization. All right, let's go through that example again that I showed you in the beginning. And basically, now that we've gone through all those different levels, let's revisit it a little bit more in detail again. So we started off by saying that we started with the shareholder satisfaction. I'm going to draw my mouse across the screen so you can follow where I'm going. So basically, we started with shareholder satisfaction, and from there we said that what that is important to them for CTQs, for the shareholder, would be corporate performance and marketplace performance. Then we shift a little bit further to the right to find the CTQs for them, and that's where we begin our level 1 CTQs. Again, beginning with financial performance, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and corporate branding. And then from there we drill down to the level 2 CTQs, which got a lot more detail for each one. And then finally we drill down to the level 3 CTQs for all those. Now basically what I'm illustrating here is that most companies, at least most corporations, will probably follow the same path on the left-hand side of the CTQ drill down. That is, starting with the shareholder satisfaction all the way to at least level 2 of the CTQs. Now granted, there are many businesses and organizations that are structured very differently and won't have shareholders, and that's perfectly fine. You can always insert your own organization within there in the structure that they have. But I would argue that the level 1 and level 2 CTQs are probably going to be about the same, maybe with exception to those under customer satisfaction at level 2, which I've illustrated here as product and service and quality. But for the most part, for financial performance, employee satisfaction, and corporate branding, those kinds of things are probably going to end up being the same through most organizations. And the ideal here is that this is not intended to be perfect or exact representation of every organization. This is intended to be a guideline. So again, if your organization happens to be different, then just reinsert the portion that is different so that it represents your organization more clearly. And what's critical here again is a level 3 CTQs. I've got a lot of examples on here, but these are merely just examples. Again, these are the things that are going to vary from department to department within the same organization. But here's where the objective is, and this is why this is so important. Again, we go back to, we want to know, are the things we're working on adding value to the business? Is this something that our business cares about? If you have a very large corporation, it can feel like you're a very small cog in such a huge, huge operation. So this is how we can align ourselves in 3 simple levels to find out what we're doing if it's important to the top level. So let's say, for example, there's somebody who's just doing some basic maintenance to some production line and some machinery that we have. Well, basic maintenance to the machine may not seem like it's something critical to the organization. However, we can still align that through the CTQ Drilldown. Let me give you an example of how we can apply it in that kind of example. So we'll say up here, there's under the operations side, extending the life of the assets, or the equipment maintenance or repairs. So somebody who's performing some general maintenance on the machine, well, if they didn't perform that kind of maintenance, what would happen to the machinery? Well, it may break down more. And if it does break down more often or more sooner than we expect, then we're going to have some additional cost. So by investing some maintenance and doing some minor repairs, it's actually doing a lot of prevention of doing costly replacements or more costly repairs to the machinery. So in that way, by doing the extension of life for our existing assets at this level 3 CTQ, we can say it rolls up to the level 2 CTQ of operating expenses. It helps improve our operating expenses. By improving our operating expenses, it improves our overall financial performance. By improving our overall financial performance, we are then improving our corporate performance and therefore keeping our shareholders satisfied. That's how you generally would roll up what you do at the level 3 all the way up to satisfying the shareholder or satisfying the ultimate owner, the ultimate customer for your organization. So I would challenge you, try to find what it is that you do and structure this to your organization to find those level 3 CTQs, fit that into a similar structure at least through the level 1 and level 2 CTQs to see at least what you're doing and the contribution that you're making to the organization and how that fits to what's important to the business.
All right, before we close this lesson, let's discuss how we can apply some of these concepts in a practical way.
All right, I know we went through a lot of detail in the CTQ Drilldown, but I want to ask you a few extra questions and things to try to look for. For example, what do you think are the level 3 CTQs in your particular department or your functional area? And then for those items, what do you think are the level 1 and level 2 CTQs that they all align to? And what other critical metrics do you have in your functional area that you just can't align to the CTQ Drilldown? I would really challenge you to explore to find those. Now, compare these level 3 CTQs that you identified to your normal job functions or any ad hoc job functions that you might have. So, which of those functions that you perform can't you align to the CTQ Drilldown? And if you can't align to the CTQ Drilldown, then why is it that you do them? I really challenge you to explore that as much as you can to really see what level of priority you give them, and does it require as much priority if there's no way you can align it to what's most important to the business as illustrated through the CTQ Drilldown. So for the functions that do align to the CTQ Drilldown, I would ask yourself, how does their alignment affect the priority level that you give them?
Well, that wraps up this lesson. Check out StatStuff.com for many more resources that can help you achieve powerful results. I'm Matt Hansen. Thanks for watching.